We're live.
Okay, you're live. There's a new trick. I just saw it. Well, good afternoon and welcome. For those that I may not know personally, my name is Crystal Nahr, and I have the profound pleasure of serving as the president of the Livingston County Library Board of Trustees this year. It has been a remarkable experience to be a part of such a long-standing organization, an entity within our community and county, and it's just such a privilege to be able to celebrate 100 years, and I see a lot of familiar faces in the room of past employees, past board members, local dignitaries. I'd be remiss if I didn't point out our presiding county commissioner, Ed Douglas, who's with us today, and I apologize if I leave anyone else that I'm not seeing your face right at the moment, but we have several things to move through today, but we want to begin by first pointing out that we have two proclamations from both the state Senate and the State House of Representatives from our actual representative of the 7th District, I believe, Peggy McGaw. On her behalf, she was unable to be with us today. And then the same for Senator Rusty Black, who also was unable to be with us today since they are in session. And then also a flag that was flown on our behalf that the senator put in the request for over the Capitol. So we are very excited to now have those in our possession for longevity's sake. Moving along, we will first begin with our introduction and enhancement of children's services from Anitra Steele, as well as Judith Schute.
Hold on, I've got a mic cue. But at first I have to. You get your thing off?
Good afternoon. I'm Anitra Steele, and I came to the Livingston County Memorial Library in June of 1972. It was my first library job out of library school, and I came as part of an Add a Professional program through the state library. In the 60s, the Missouri State Library wanted to upgrade libraries, and so they did demonstration libraries, and they would go with a professional librarian and collections of books and set up libraries in counties to try to get them to see what good library service could provide for a community. And then they would hold it to a vote, and then the people in those counties would vote whether they wanted to be a county library and support it to a reasonable amount to have this quality of service. Well, Lynn County, Livingston County, and Carroll County were three counties that had a demonstration library. They voted. Carroll County voted no and didn't give the books back. Lynn County voted no, and from what I overheard from a person who was fixing the double doors of the library early on, he didn't want his tax money going to foreign counties. But Livingston County voted yes and had a bookmobile service to the rural, to Wheeling and the schools in the county, and then had the Livingston County Memorial Library. It had had since 1924 a library, but this made it the county library, serving everyone in the county. In the early 70s, the state library featured an Add a Professional grant, and Ms. Demarius signed up for that, and I interviewed for the job here in Livingston County on an Add a Professional grant, which would pay me the magnificent sum of $7,000 a year, but it did have health coverage through the state library's plan. Well, the money only lasted a year, and the library board met to decide whether they were going to take on my salary, because they were promised me for free for 3 years, and they only got me free for 1. And the board said they would assume my salary, and Ruth, the library secretary, treasurer, accountant at the time, said, give her $7,200. And they said, why? And she says, $7,200 is easier to divide by 12. So I'm one of the few people who got a raise because of division. When I was hired, Ms. Demarius took me down to the unimproved basement area, and she says, I want you to turn this into a children's library, because the children's collection was in that little alcove next to the stairs going downstairs, not very big. And so, gung-ho, fresh out of college, wet behind the ears, we proceeded to turn that area into a children's library. She taught me how to lay brick, because we bricked up the interior downspouts. When it rained, it would make the basement wet, so there was big argument on the board about putting outside downspouts and ruining the look of the building, and we really ought to do them in copper, and they'll steal the copper, you know, you're gonna do it in galvanized. We got the copper, it looks great. So we bricked up all the interior drainage pipes. Also got to pull the weeds in the parking lot, unload 18-wheelers. I didn't realize that they only drive, they don't unload. And she had ordered a bunch of knockdown shelves, kind of utility shelves, because they were moving the romances and the westerns and the mysteries onto these shelves in the lobby area. And so Ms. Marius and I took them off the 18-wheeler, carried them up the front steps, in the doors, and then put them together on the floor of the lobby area. Very hands-on. So anyway, we did that. On rainy days when it was slow, and I know, I'm very proud you're a memorial library, and definitely Miss D deserves memory. But we would go around and with little screwdrivers and remove all the memorial plaques. All the chairs, all the tables, everything had memorial. And have you ever tried to set something on a table that has a plaque screwed on it and it falls? So we did that. Maybe you should, maybe those folks, that may not have been good. I was the first children's librarian. So I did various programs. We did a pet show where a young man rode up on his motorcycle with his 4-foot iguana wrapped around his face. Very impressive. We did a sidewalk chalk drawing because we had nice sidewalks here. We had the bookmobile that would go, and I would go out to the different schools in the county to promote the summer reading program. Had a flat tire on the way to Wheeling. Cows are not helpful. Changing a flat tire. Fortunately, my car manual had a book that it showed you how to do it. We had the 16mm film co-op. If you are old enough to remember 16mm films, we'd get a big canvas tote of films. There would be a travelogue so that the Rotarians had something to watch. There were cartoons, 4 cartoon type things for story time. And some educational films. and Ralph, the bookmobile driver, was the person who would check those films. If you haven't, I'm sure you do, the slideshow Chillicothe Now and Then. My husband did that, photographing out of historical books from the turn of the century, buildings and things in Chillicothe, and then walking around and photographing as it was in the 70s. It's sure changed. And then one of the last couple of things, we had a mimeograph machine. You're probably not old enough to remember the scent of fresh mimeograph, but we had the staff bathrobe, because when you worked the mimeograph machine, it spit. And so if you were going to produce something, you would put on the staff bathrobe to create the mimeograph, to print things out. And Miss Demarius worked very hard to get the elevator. And I said we would make it the Lillian Demarius Memorial Elevator. She's got a whole building now, and she certainly deserved it.
Thank you.
Hello. Well, I arrived at the library in June of 1980, and Anitra was followed by Janet Hartline, who was a friend of mine, and she went from being children's librarian to the director of the library. And when I arrived in 1980, the department consisted of 2 full-time staff, myself and an assistant, and a high school student who came after school every day and shelved everything. They shelved upstairs and downstairs. Everything that had come back that day, they shelved. The children's library, when I started, closed at 5 o'clock every day. The adult department was open till 8 o'clock. Children's closed at 5. And we all took turns working the evening shift at the adult department, so we kind of knew both floors in those days. We also closed the children's library at lunchtime, because with only 2 full-time staff, and we staffed it on Saturdays, one of us always took a day off during the week for the Saturday. Well, that left one person who still got to have a lunchtime, so they just closed the library. And in those days, the outside stairs to the children's department were not covered over, so we had this chain that we put across at the top of the stairs. We were really glad when they covered it, because we no longer had to go out and shovel the snow that fell and was a real health hazard to everybody. When I was hired, my job was to develop, maintain and build a collection, and then to promote it so that the items were all used, which makes sense. You just figure out different ways that you can share these wonderful new materials you've bought with the public. And so I gave thousands of programs. I gave programs to adult groups, children's groups, teacher groups. At one time, we had 8 weekly story times during the session here at the library. That was before they came up with the seatbelt law, because these children came from some small private daycare centers, and the moms would pitch 6 kids in the back seat or at the back of the station wagon, and here they'd come. And so we had lots and lots of fun with our story times. Things change, and when the seatbelt went through, none of those small independent groups could come anymore. And so we didn't have enough staff to do outreach at that time. So we still did Head Start, but we weren't able to go in and serve at any others. In time, they added 2 part-time positions to the children's department, so we had a full-time equivalent. Each of them worked half a day, and at one point, these 2 women came to me and they said, could we each work a day, 2.5 days, instead of 5 half days? So that worked fine, no problems. We had lots of things when I came disappeared over the years I was here. Some of the things we added, we got the first Apple computer, we got CDs and DVDs, we had the Ellison cutter, thanks to Phyllis Harkness, who had a niece in college where they had an Ellison cutter, and she thought this was the best idea we'd ever had, and it was one of the very best. I was here when Friends of the Library was founded by Sue Rose Harder in order to pass a bond. I believe it was a bond at that time instead of a levy. The internet came into action. Karen provided our online card catalog. Kids were fine with this. There were adults until the time I left that still didn't really want to use the computer. They wanted to be told where the books were, and that was fine. But kids loved it. They'd click all over. We were all kind of, some of us were panicky about what to click, what not to click, would we lose it all? Kids came in and they loved it. So that was a smooth transition, partly because of the way Karen organized it, and partly because kids are just so into all of that. They're not afraid to fail. We moved over the years. I was part of 3 moves when we put new carpet in the children's department. And when we put new carpet in, that required shifting every book, every bookcase, and yes, we did that. And then 2 of us would, then they'd be bolted together. So Chris and I, and we would just pick those bookcases up and shift them into the other room. And then we had to shift them all back when the time came. When I came, the bookcases had arrived from several different places, and they didn't all even match in color. So the first thing we did was we had Selena's dad do a car paint on all of them so that they at least all were the same color, and that was real exciting. And then during one of our renovations, we discovered that unfortunately there had still been some leaks, and so some of our bookcases had gotten rusty. And we really wanted to replace those, and I had a dream that we could have all matching bookcases. And so there wasn't funding at that time for that project, so we went to the public, and for $40 each, people could buy a shelf and dedicate it. And it was very popular. We ended up spending over $10,000 on new shelves, and long after we'd met our goal, people still came to us wanting to dedicate a shelf to someone. And so that was a lot of work, but it was worth it, and we were really pleased with our results. When I first started at the library, the reference sections in both the adult department and the children's department were quite large. For one thing, we housed magazines. They kept 5 years of the back subscriptions of magazines, because that's how kids did their reports for school. You had big books, you looked up your topic, it told you what months and what magazines you might find an article in, and then we had to provide a list of what magazines we would provide from those, and then they would come with their list of magazines, and those were in the basement. And in the early days, when the basement locked up at 5 o'clock, you had to go down and turn all the lights on to get to the back room, and then you'd pull their magazines, and oh, we were not fond if somebody had stuck a magazine back in the wrong place. That did not go well. But over time, when we had the children's department open the same hours as the adult department, then at least the lights were on when we came down. Well, over time, with the internet and all, we didn't require all of those nice reference materials, so those began to be eliminated from our collection. During my final year as a school speech therapist, I thought, Lord, find me a new path, because I don't think this one goes all the way. When I retired from Livingston County Library after 33 years of doing the job I was born to do, I was very grateful that my wish had been granted.
Man, Mikey, man.
You didn't break it.
Nope, not yet.
In a few years since I've been up these steps. My name is Karen Hicklin, and with very few exceptions, I know more about this place than any of you do. I have been to the bottom of the elevator pit, and I have been up on the rooftop. I don't think there's an inch of this building that in the 22 years that I was here that I didn't get to go into, explore, be a part of, change, mess up probably some, but it was a fabulous joy, and truly the best part of my career. This is still, and forgive me for saying this is still my library.
Sure is. Sure is.
So, but I have, it is now in the hands of people that I think are doing a wonderful job, and it has been ever since I left. Whenever Robin came, she did magnificent things, and Sue has done magnificent things as well, and Candy in her brief period as the director here also did great things. And that's the wonderful thing about Livingston County Library. When I inherited it, everything ran great. You know, I didn't have to start anything up really. I didn't have to fix anything. It ran, and it ran well. And that is a tribute to the people that were my predecessors, and I hope that I was able to, I hope the others that succeeded me, I hope they are able to say the same thing. Livingston County Library has been a significant part of my life since I was a child, because I used to go over to the library whenever it was on the corner of Jackson and Washington Street, where Investors Community Bank is now, and that's where I would go pick out my books so that I could take them home and read them. Or I might run into Ralph Shipley, that was the bookmobile driver that would come to Spring Hill every once in a while and during the summer, and I could pick out my own books then. I also have very fond memories of Grace Eckert, who was the children's librarian and who is the typical grandmothery kind of person that you want to see when you walk into the library. She was the age of a grandmother. She looked like a grandmother, had beautiful white hair, and was sweet and kind and friendly and welcoming to every child that walked in that library. So those people started changing, well, not changing, but started firming up the feelings that I had towards libraries, which, as it turned out, benefited me throughout my entire life. So after I got a little bit of age on me, I have a few memories of after the library moved over to here, of being here and visiting a few times. But one lucky day, the woman who was the school librarian at the high school, who I volunteered for, said, you know, Miss D was looking for somebody to come and be a library page. Would you be interested in a job maybe over at Livingston County Library? And I thought, okay, that sounds great. I'd get paid. I would get paid $1 an hour. So I came over and interviewed, and sure enough, by golly, they hired me. So that became the first step in my many steps here with Livingston County Library. Much to my surprise, after I graduated from high school, and 9 years later, I was working at the Missouri State Library, and I opened up the quarterly magazine that they produced that was sent out to all the public libraries in the state. And I happened to open it up to the back pages, which is where they had the listing for job openings. And oh my gosh, there's an advertisement for the director of Livingston County Library. And I thought that would never happen because Janet was so young, and why would she possibly want to leave here? but that job was open. But unfortunately, the deadline to turn in your resume was that day. So I ran upstairs and used the state library's telephone and called and talked to Janet, and I said, I just found out about it. She said, don't worry about it, just go ahead and send your resume in. So I did, came up a couple of weeks later, interviewed for the job, and on August the 15th, 1983, I became the 6th or 7th library director for the Livingston County Library. So it was a great day for me. There were some of the people that I worked with in high school that were still here, still working here. Dorothy Tevis was here, Jean Chambers were here, but some of the other old timers, Vera May, she was retired by then, Ruth Harris, Dorothy Bone was here, but she had retired by then, and Earl Teagarden, who I knew as the guy who sat upstairs in the Somerville room all the time reading all the books. He was gone by then too, he had retired. But anyway, they came in, and for some reason they trusted somebody who really didn't know what the heck they were doing. But as I said, this place was so set up, so well set up, that it was easy for me to step right in. In trying to think through all of the changes that I witnessed while I was here, I came up with enough to fill this book. The good news is I decided not to. But there's some really, it really hit me how much changed in the short period of time that I was here. I was here as the director for 22 years. And we went from phonograph records to books on tape to books on CD. We went from the 16mm film projectors to 16mm films and the projectors. Sometimes we would check out the projectors as well, but I think you had to be trained in order to be able to do that. Then we went over to VHS tapes and VHS players that we checked out to people, and then finally over to DVDs. We went from having a full reference department to all of a sudden having the internet to be able to answer questions a lot more quickly and easily than we had. And then of course the biggest change, I think, was the introduction of a card catalog, an online card catalog, and then the next step immediately after that was for internet access. One of the things that I remember about changing to the circulation system was we had to close for a few days, and I think it might have been at the same time that we got rid of the orange carpet that would have been installed whenever Anitra was here in the 60s. So 20 years later, we were able to get rid of the orange carpet and change that out because the paths were worn down the aisles. And so we had some stands built around the pillars that were downstairs, and the server had to be put in the closet and had to be loaded, and we had to be trained, and so we were closed for several days, which was really unusual for us. And so the morning after, the 9 o'clock came and the doors flew open, and this was in the middle of summer, and I remember so well, this little boy came running in the front door, and he stopped dead in his tracks, and he said, "Wow, cool." It's been a long time since librarians got to be called cool, but I know we finally got there. We also were as far as I can remember, I believe we were the first place that offered public access to the internet. So we were teaching lots of people how to use the internet, and that it would not blow up if you pressed the wrong button. And that, here's how you set up email, here's how you do searching. All of this was done in what would now be considered a fairly primitive environment, simply because we didn't have the user interface that we have now. We were still using DOS back then, and so it was a challenge, but it was a lot of fun. And what I realized in making these lists of all of these things that the library used to do and now has changed and has improved is that's what libraries do. Libraries adapt. We recognize what it is that our communities need. We recognize what the people in our communities want us to do, want to be able to do themselves, and the libraries change and adapt to make that happen for them. Libraries are a reflection of the whole community. And as new technology evolves and as new needs arise, the Livingston County Library will continue to thrive because for 100 years, this community, this county, has loved this library and supported it both financially and just by being here and continuing to use it. I am terribly honored to have been a part of this history, and I look forward to following it for many years to come. Thank you.
Hook me up. I told him I didn't need this. Those of you who know me know my voice kind of projects anyway. We good?
Yep.
Okay. Karen, it's been a long time since I've come up these stairs as well. Hi everybody, I'm Robin Westfall, and I was library director here from 2005, August 6, 2005, until 2017. I was library director here. I remember my interview very distinctly. I had just graduated from library school in 2004 and decided at that point, like, I want to be a director. I knew that was kind of what my calling was and what I wanted to do. And I remember driving up to Chillicothe, came up by myself, and driving over the viaduct and just falling in love with this community immediately, as soon as I came into town. Brought the family afterwards, and it was a wonderful place to raise my two daughters. The thing I remember about that interview was they told me there will be a building project in your future. And I was like, okay, a building project. Okay, we have a few little things we needed to do. Well, as we went and toured the building, it became evident that this was going to be a pretty major building project that we were going to undertake. There's no running water on this floor, the second floor or the third floor of the building, and there were obviously other things that needed to be done immediately. So I started in 2005, and by 2007 we had passed a bond issue, and we passed it overwhelmingly support. The community very much wanted the library to stay right here, and the theme for our campaign, or the Friends campaign, was preserving the past for your future. It's very much still that same feeling. I look at this room. I'm now, for those of you who don't know, I'm now serve as the state librarian for the state of Missouri, which is, a great accomplishment. But I have to say, one of my best accomplishments was picking out the tapestry for this room. I remember the staff. I see several of my staff members in here. We had a swatch. We literally had a swatch of the tapestry, and to try to pick out what this was going to look like. And we very much wanted it to look like the 1920s or 1930s. And it's just amazing how it turned out. During the project, Karen, I saw the guts of the building just as you had when you were here. And there was a dumbwaiter in this building. There was two safes. One was on the top of the other. There was the hidden staircase behind the walls where the postmaster could spy on what it was that the postal workers were doing at the time. There's just so many great. This building has great bones. And so I'm so thrilled that the community decided that this is where we wanted to stay. I remember distinctly I wish we could show you what the tapestry looked like before. It was very faded. It was sort of a yellow colored tapestry. And when they took it down, several of the staff and I, we had literally brought in chairs, maybe some lawn chairs, and we watched the process as they pulled down this old tapestry. And lo and behold, what was behind the tapestry was horsehair and hay and soot, because this building was coal fed. And so the soot had come up through these vents, and it was back in behind there. So they tore this down. The gentlemen who were tearing this down, they were just covered in it afterwards. But it was just remarkable. I mean, a young director, all directors should have to have a building project at some point in their library tenure, because it just, it really, you get to know your community really well, because they were so much involved, and your staff all had to pull together to work. Now, is there anybody from OSHA in the room? Okay, so seeing that there's not, I do have a story to tell. I see so many of my staff people in the building so these windows over here, they open up enough that you could crawl out on the little balcony that's out there. And we had to have some way of getting shelving up and down. For a while during the renovation project, this was the library. This room was the library, and across the hall we had library facilities as well. I'm trying to think of which part we had the children's library in. But we had to get the shelving up here to do it. So we rented, as a staff, we rented a lift, and we, as a staff, y'all remember this, don't you? We were bringing the shelving up. I don't even think we had harnesses, guys. Which is, we didn't, did we, Retta? So we brought the shelf up through the window and put it in here ourselves. It was, looking back, probably pretty foolish, but it was such an experience that we all worked on and got to do that together. The idea for this room came from seeing To Kill a Mockingbird, and there's a famous scene in there where the courtroom scene where the African American folks had to sit in the balcony, and there was a balcony where they were watching the trial, and because this had been a courtroom, we very much wanted to keep that same vibe in this room, and so we built that back behind there with the staircase and all to just kind of have that image. We did not close. We stayed open during the renovation. Now there'd be a few days where we would close just because we had to move stuff around. The staff here had to hear jackhammers. Everybody had their own personalized hard hat. That just became part of what it was that we carried, that we had with us at work. We became very good friends with the construction crew from Jody Case. Crystal's husband and brother were both part of the crew and became just part of our family during the 18 months it took to renovate this building. It definitely has preserved the past of this community for the future. So I guess, and I do feel like it's important to thank the community for putting up with and just going along this ride with us for this wonderful renovation project. During the renovation project, I called Lillian because this had been her baby, and she put in as Karen said, she had put in the elevator, or Anitra had said she'd put in the elevator. This building meant a lot to her. So I called her because I wanted to know what she would want. What would your vision be if you were renovating this building? And she had said to me, just make sure that it's always going to be able to stand, that you're always going to be able to have the technology that the building was going to need. Hence, the plugins in the floor in this room, and the way that it was wired. And so she and I spoke several times during that renovation project, just as I kept her up to date on what it was that we were doing. When Lillian passed away, we'd already finished the project, and what I remember about that was Danette Reardon, who worked at that time for Citizens Bank, and Bill Young and some other folks from the bank came over to see me, and they said, somebody has left something for the library. Okay, someone has left something for the library. I swear to you, I thought it was their Zane Grey collection of old westerns, which would have been valuable at the time, and we always had people wanting Zane Grey, so I was like, okay, we're going to get 100 Zane Grey books, and we're going to figure out what we're going to do with that. So when they told me at the time who it was, and when they told me it was $7 million, literally fell out of my chair. And was just so grateful that Lillian saw the value of this library and this community. I went up to her memorial service that they had for her in Grundy Center, Iowa, and it was me and her caregivers at the time. And there was an outdoor service, and the whole time I remembered there is this hawk that is sitting in this tree that is watching the service as it goes. And I couldn't help but think that that was Lillian sitting there watching the service. So I know we're going to talk about the trust and what all that has meant. I can tell you, as state librarian, I get to see 160 library districts in this wonderful state. This is still the best library in all of Missouri, and it's because of the staff that have come before and after me who are keeping it that way. So really a crown jewel, not just for Chillicothe, but for the state. And when I tell everybody, what is it that has got you to where you are? It's this library and all the things that we were able to do in my time here. So thank you.
I feel compelled to mention that's one of the first times I've used those stairs. I have the very interesting position as a storyteller of telling you a story about a person that I have never met, but many of you have. So I am more than open to corrections and additions after our program, because Lillian Demarius is a fascinating woman. In fact, from what I have gathered, in some ways she was a study in contrasts. She was not an imposing person. Petite, freckled face, page boy haircut, liked to wear slacks when that was not yet the thing, made a lot of clothes herself, didn't wear much makeup, but drove a gold Camaro to and from work every day. And it must have been impressive, because I've talked to someone who was her high school shelver at the time, and she still recalled. So it must have been quite the car. And her personality compared to what she was driven to do continues to be interesting to me, and she always was that way. In the 1930s, very few women had the opportunity to go to college. It was a waste to educate a housewife, would have been the thought. So Miss D, as her employees called her, graduated high school and enrolled at the University of Iowa. If a woman made it to college, they would be very strongly encouraged to keep their studies within the realm of child development or home economics. Again, because we expect that within a few years you'll be married and running a household, and that's what we're here to train you for. So Miss D got a degree in business, and instead of getting her MRS, she went ahead and got a master's in library science, and off she came across the border into Missouri to begin her career as a librarian. And I found it very interesting that she did not just take a job and stay, which would have also been the norm for the time. She continued to move from library to library, working up a little higher position, a little bit more responsibility, came through the state library office, and from there, regional libraries were just becoming a concept, and she made her way into Northwest Missouri to be the acquisitions director at a regional library. And then in 1970, here she came to Chillicothe, Missouri to be our executive director. And as a couple of folks have alluded to, her passion was access. Can the people of Livingston County find what they need here? Can we provide what they need here? Can they get to the building? And that is one of the first things I heard about her over and over was she arrived and she looked this building over and she said, we have a fine collection and anyone with any type of mobility struggle can't get to it at all. There was no ramp, there was no elevator. That staircase is gorgeous, but it's not very navigable for a great many folks. So her, one of the items on her agenda was installing the Lillian Demarius Memorial Elevator so that we would be accessible, but that was not enough. She didn't stop until she had a ramp outside the building, and the sources I looked at wanted to be sure and note that it was a covered ramp because Miss D was nothing if not thorough. She made sure her patrons were also out of the rain as they entered the building. And her creation of the children's department is near and dear to my heart. I get to do the job I do because of what she started there. And she did indeed decide that the basement was the obvious place to begin a children's department. And I'm told Bratza went in to look at it, who laughed at her and said, there are far too many problems for this to ever become a public access area. So she hired a children's librarian and said, why don't you come build a library down here? I'll teach you to lay brick. And that's exactly where we went. And she was equally driven and quietly successful in her personal life as well. She was very involved in the Women's Investment Club in Chillicothe in the 1970s, and she was quite a good investor. Very heavily in pharmaceuticals, as it turned out. Her sister was a doctor back in Iowa, so they had a front row view of new drugs as they were coming out, and used some of that information and her sister's predictions to make some very wise investments. Even after she retired from the library, she stayed in the community, and perhaps my favorite story, according to one of her neighbors, there was a very large stump in her front yard, and they watched her morning after morning come out the front door with a hatchet and proceed to just wail at the stump for a period of time, and then she would go back in. Well, being friendly, neighborly Chillicothe people, they went over and said, would you like us to help you remove that stump? And they were corrected. That stump was her exercise plan, and it was expected to stay exactly where it was so she could continue using it as her exercise plan. Truly one of a kind. And when she passed and she left money to the library, although I have not met her, she does seem very dear to me, because we in Chillicothe have in Missouri the only library system with a dedicated building for children's and youth materials. And from our preliminary research, we can't find another place in the United States that has such a thing. And that cutting edge was exactly what she wanted to be. Because we have that, I am able to be a children's librarian, and I was able to get certified as an oral storyteller so that that could be another service that we offer to all of our patrons. Thank you.
Hello. Envision me as Candy Warren. Candy sends her regrets. She has faced COVID in every way possible.
as an administrator of the library, making sure that we had services continuing through the pandemic. And lo and behold, she has COVID herself right now. So please send some good vibes and some prayers her way. We would appreciate that. In her stead, I'm going to read what she had wrote. So just picture Candy here with her sweet smile. This chapter in library history could be titled Buckle Up and Hang On for Dear Life. During the next 4-year period, the library was certainly in expansion era. The staff, board, and community members who supported this time of expansion will always be near and dear to her heart. She would be remiss not to take a moment to think of those supporters who are no longer with us. And Lillian, Miss D, is certainly not alone in leaving a legacy here in the library. When she transformed to the children's coordinator to director, the library was in the process of joining Missouri Evergreen, as well as working on another big next chapter. This allowed us to expand beyond the brick and mortar building by pooling our resources with libraries across the state of Missouri. It was a thrilling time to realize that we were opening our collection to allow patrons access to a wider scope of materials. This brought many changes, from finding space to accommodate the new system, staffing to handle the ever-increasing flow of books in and out. I look at Doris and Marcia, because they had a big part of that during their tenure here, and relabeling and cleaning up the collection to integrate into a joint catalog. This has forever changed how patrons and staff utilize the resources available to us. Meanwhile, while we continue to flourish thanks to the generosity of Miss D, it was hard to even find the words to express the wonderful impact she has made on our library and community. Expansion of other sorts were beginning to manifest. Miss D wanted her gift to be used for expansion, growth, programming, and books. However, we were quickly running out of room and staff to deliver those wonderful goals of Miss D. So with the help of a lawyer, the courts allowed us to modify the trust to ensure the progress and the vision that Lillian brought to us to continue to roll along. Just like a home that's full of love and stories, our 4 walls were becoming increasingly crowded and our closets were full. So we learned a new system of doing library work. We continue to sail forth by adding a new building. This is a special gift to the youth for the community. This meant we learning how to have staff in 2 buildings, learning how to get materials back and forth, settling into our new space, and eagerly welcoming the youth with open arms. However, that's a big however. First, the world would come to a screeching halt, almost overnight because of the COVID-19 pandemic. This brought through a different kind of expansion as libraries everywhere pivoted to think outside of the box, not only to keep our employees working, but how to get the resources to our patrons. We had to learn to expand in a new way, while the new and changing information about the COVID-19 virus and how it worked was coming out daily. This took many forms and fashions. We increased our electronic checkouts, our online catalogs, and our databases. We extended our Wi-Fi hours into our parking lots. We offered curbside services, and we kept our materials sanitized. There are many uncertainties, but there's only one thing that we did know. The building project must go on. So it did, and we learned as long as shipping can take when a world shuts down. Jody, I'm looking at you like, okay. So the supply and demand, that was definitely affected during the COVID pandemic. Candy went back and she pulled out her journal from that time to relive some of her moments. She had to chuckle when she ran along the statement. This certainly is a season, though right now it feels like a monsoon season. Finally, at long last, the doors of the new Youth Library branch opened. Our first patrons through the door were George and Rosina Harder. Yeah. Very fitting, given their long support of the library. Right behind the Harders have come many, many youth, bringing with them the sounds of shaky aches and giggles and giving Misty a library
of her own.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to speak to you today very briefly, but on behalf of the Livingston County Trust Board. It was established to monitor and manage Lillian's requests. It was expanded to include programming and experiences, especially related to several events. The current mission is to monitor and ascertain, to be sure that Lillian's bequest is being distributed according to her wishes, and we believe to this point it certainly is, to ensure that we maintain a diverse portfolio with 3 financial investors, Southern Bank, Edward Jones, and Stifel, to help balance the investments for Lillian's request. The accomplishments are wonderful Lillian Damaris Youth Library, as you have heard. It's just like a dream come true. It is a lovely building, beautiful addition to our community, and as we're finding, one of its own kind throughout the nation. We are so blessed and so thankful for that. Plus, we took help with the purchasing and renovating and maintaining of the youth library into the future. We purchased additional collections to develop materials for developing materials and technology, especially for youth, facilitating programming specifically for youth and their development. So we've covered a lot. Here at the main library, the trust provided for substantial repairs needed to the roof and to Lillian's elevator. We also expanded technology and programming and continue to provide additional lending library resources. And I mustn't fail to forget the mural, our beautiful mural that we were able to have Kelly Poling, and I was blessed, and other members, to get to select a book to be in the mural. So that was a fun thing for all of us. Going forward, the Trust Board is committed to seeing that Lillian Damaris's wishes, directions, and vision is fulfilled. Thank you.
As Aaron is miking up, I will refer back to the program. Monica Homewood Sanchez, she was the first adult services coordinator that was hired in that position, and she was scheduled to speak, but she couldn't be here with us. So once again, we wish her well, and I think Miss Erin is going to continue. Thank you.
Hey everybody, my name is Erin Dennis, and I'm the current president of Friends of the Library. And I guess I'll say a little bit about how that came about. I'm born and raised in Chillicothe, and I'm a lifetime library card-carrying member of Livingston County Library. I absolutely love this library. I have really great memories from when I was a child. Our 2 things that we got to do when I was little, because we didn't have a lot of money, was play outside or go to the library, because you could go get as many books as you wanted. I have a lot of memories, Judith, of you and your, reading the summer reading books to us, and the penny jars. Do you remember the penny jars? I won those several times, and boy, I thought I was set for life when I was 5 years old. So, wonderful memories of the library. So it really means a lot to me to be able to serve in that role, and yeah, it's been amazing experience. So I'm going to give you just a little bit of an overview of what we're doing right now with the Friends of the Library. It got shut down during COVID. For everybody knows why, the craziness that happened. But in June of 23, so June of last year, we started to reorganize. And the way that I got involved was I reached out to Sue before, and I'm like, hey, if you have anything that, needs done at the library, I'd love to serve, I'd love to do whatever I can. So, when that meeting came up, she's like, why don't you come to the reorganization meeting? And then here I am. I have no idea how I got into this position, but here I am. So some of the things that the Friends of the Library has sponsored recently is the Fall Wine Walk. I don't know if any of you went to that, but we provided the snacks for the Fall Wine Walk. We always help with Boo Fest, but this year at Boo Fest, it was Sue's idea, and it was brilliant. We offered adult books for the parents for the first time. So they loved it. They were out in 45 minutes, I think? They were gone, so hopefully we can do that again next year. Some of the other events that we help sponsor, when I say sponsor, I mean, if we need to provide food or anything like that, or extra hands for volunteers. They had a Bob Ross painting event. I don't know if anybody here went to that. It was a Bob Ross inspired painting event. I heard that was amazing. We helped with the food there. We did sponsor one of the 12 Days of Christmas and the Valentine's Sweet Stroll that happened last week. We helped with the fruit on that. And we also helped with today's event too. We helped with the book cake. And that was Rosina's idea, by the way. So kudos to her for finding that. So looking ahead, we're going to do the Spring Wine Walk. We're going to help with the Summer Reading Kickoff, Sliced Bread Day, and of course the Summer Rabbit Party. I think we're doing the Bubble Party again. We're going to help with that. And we're also looking to maybe host a couple of authors, maybe a children's author as well as an adult author event. I think it would be super exciting to have, an author that comes back. I don't know when the last time we had an author here, so I know that we're having one in March, though. Jim
Cosgrove,
right? Yeah. All right. So that'll be exciting too. Another thing that we're working on to make membership easier, because we really rely on our members and our membership to help bring in some of those funds so we can continue to support these programs. We're going to try to make an online application process where you can submit your application just through the website and then possibly pay through maybe PayPal or Venmo. We want to make it super easy for people. I feel like if we take away some of the barriers of having to come in and fill out a paper form and leave a check or pay with cash, I think that would kind of increase membership there as well. We're going to try to increase our social media presence to get the word out about Friends of the Library. And then of course we want to continue to partner with all the community events, like the wine walks, all the Main Street events. That went off really, really well this year. Let's see. I want to also thank the executive board that's here. I think almost everybody's here. Let's see. Amy Dickerson's here. She's vice president. Do you want to wave, Amy? Vice President Amy. Tina Eggers is our treasurer. Tina's here. Rosina Harder is our secretary. And George Harder's a board member and also the fill-in secretary when Rosina has to step out. And of course we have Sue, our director, she's on the board. Jody Moore, the youth services coordinator. Kirsten, the adult services coordinator. And then we also have Kelly James as a board member as well. Am I forgetting anybody, Sue?
I don't think so.
Okay. We've also had Janae McNally. She's helped us out. She created us a new Friends of the Library logo that we all love. So she's helped out a lot, and she has helped out me with a lot of fundraising ideas. We're trying to figure out, how to easily get some more revenue, and we've gone to some events, and I think we've got some exciting things coming up if we can get it pulled off. But lastly, I really want to just thank our general membership. I see a lot of familiar faces here, so if you're a general member, do you just want to raise your hand so we can see how many members that we have here? All right. Thank you all. That's really how we can keep this going, is through our membership. So if anybody's interested in becoming a member, we'd be happy to sign you up. Share with your family and friends that love the library and want to support, because it's because of you guys that we can keep it going, and not just through the monetary donations. You know, they help with volunteering. Anytime we need a few more hands, they help with brainstorming at the meetings. They give us a lot of information, a lot of rich discussion at those general meetings as well. So that is all I have. Thank you.
My goodness, I'll try to keep this short, but I don't know how I'm going to do that. I have been coming to this library and other libraries since I was about 4. So my very first real memory was going into the library over here at the corner, and I needed a book because I was doing a report on the Eiffel Tower. No, not the Eiffel Tower, the Empire State Building. And the librarian, I believe it was Grace, and she was so great and pulled a book out for me, and I will never forget that. It was one of my best memories from childhood. And then they built the second edition, or the second floor. They renovated that for the children's library, and I sat up there for hours reading books like Ghostly Tales to be Told and Tall, Dark, and Handsome. I was really into that. And after school, I would go up there almost every day and sit down with my books and read up there. And then, lo and behold, when I was a young mom, this became my first job as Judith's assistant. And we just hit it off so well and became fast friends and soulmates, and we just fell in love with our jobs and each other. So it was wonderful. And then I went to law school. Ooh. But when I came back to Chillicothe, I was sitting in my house one day, and Judith was there having tea, and I said, Judith, I need to do something. I said, do you think that they would like to have a Friends of the Library group? And she said, yes, because we want to renovate, and we're going to need somebody to head up a bond thing. So I started researching and found out that all the paperwork had lapsed with the Secretary of State. So I worked hard to get that going back up again, and we got the Friends group going back again. And I'm so pleased to know that it's in good hands now and that it is flourishing. I really am happy about that. So thank you, Erin, and everyone else that's doing that for us. So I'm really here to talk about Cultural Corner and how the library works with Cultural Corner. And we are just kind of starting our collaboration. Of course, we've been sister organizations for many, many years, but we are really working hard to improve that collaboration. And just recently, we had a Bob Ross painting night where we had 18 people come to Cultural Corner, and they did a Bob Ross painting. And the Friends provided wonderful, wonderful refreshments, and everyone had a wonderful time. Now, one of the things that I do is march down here with my little flyers for every little program or painting class or anything else that we do, and I post it on the bulletin board, and I also post it at the children's library. So that's just really a good thing to have for us to promote our projects. And then we are also starting to work with the library on additional programming, and we've got something coming up in March, I believe. Can't give you the exact date without the calendar, but we're going to do a program, some kind of a little craft or something for some folks that are development disabled that come to the library regularly, and they're going to come to Cultural Corner to do their project this time. So we are really looking forward to the future and improving that relationship, and we appreciate it so much because it gives us another outlet to be creative and to explore and be artistic, and we just love it. So anyway, this has been a huge part of my life, And just this week, just before I came, I was sitting reading the library book and thinking, oh gosh, can't wait to get this one done so I can go get another one. So thank you.
Oh. Maybe Mike myself.
Could I talk for hours?
I'm Kirsten Mouton. I'm the Adult Services Coordinator, and I also manage the genealogy room and the archive collection room. And Stu asked me to talk about the future, which is really strange because usually if I'm up giving a talk, it's local history. So it was a mindset shift. But we do have a lot of things going on, not only touch on a few of them now. But there's a room down in the basement that used to be staff room, and we're at some point, I call it phase 5. We're maybe entering phase 3 right now. It'll be makerspace. So that'll be something really cool and neat for the community. On the first floor, we're looking to use that very far back space as a staff area. And that's partly for staff, but also so we can store some materials so we can start checking out weird items like fishing poles and tackle boxes and a telescope. I don't see Michael here. And other tools or a strange cake pan that someone might need once in a while. The genealogy and archive rooms, you'd think they'd be a really static collection, but they're always in a state of flux, it seems. But I'm always looking for ways to make those more accessible to the public, which goes along with what a lot of people said today, trying to make things accessible. So we do have a downtown tour that is available either through our website or through QR codes that you might see around, and I've got a couple of wrap cards there. And last year we added Grace Episcopal Church and the Sliced Bread Innovation Center. So that's an expandable program. We also have an online county encyclopedia that I will just sadly say it's work in progress when I get the time, and I've decided to rearrange some of it, but that's something, there's a few cards over there for that as well. And turning to programming, we have a really awesome team at the library. Don't let that go to your head. We have restarted, so Margaret had alluded to that. The Chillicothe Development Center that has started under Robin, and it had a really long spell that we didn't have it during COVID, but they have come back now, and so we're doing programs with them. And Lori's looking for ways to sort of think outside the box. We do take and makes every month, and we've had patrons ask for more in-person craft programs, so we're trying to do that. And it's not just craft programs, but some of the staff have been offering the craft programs, or even Janae did a photography for your iPhone 101 kind of program, so staff stepping up to do some of that. We have a core group that has started meeting, and we have been developing programs and decoration ideas, and I've had help with the newsletter, and then all the staff end up pitching in. So I mean, it really takes a team to provide everything that we want to provide. We also have been trying to do hybrid programs, so like this is being streamed on Facebook for someone who can't come, or they want to watch it again later. Oh, maybe you want to watch it 5 times. Maybe not. We have a lot of partnerships that we maintain and grow. So Main Street, the recent one with Cultural Corner, and we did one last week with Salty Hippo. And we've also reached out to a lot of our businesses. Usually our summer reading program, we do quite a bit with our local businesses. I don't know if everyone saw our Friends video that we made. It posted out in September. It was awesome. If you haven't seen it, you really should, because I think it's brilliant and spot on. If you watch the original Friends intro and then watch ours, we got it. Well, what you might notice in that, it's some library staff, but it's not all library staff. We also invited some community leaders. So we have some other people in there having a lot of fun and reaching out to folks. So what it comes down to, and I think some other people, Karen actually was saying almost exactly what I have on my card. that we're doing what libraries have always done, and that is to adapt and innovate to provide what the community wants and needs. And that's really our story through history. That's all I've got.
Good afternoon. So I'm a little nervous. When I look at a room full of people, they're usually 5. So bear with me. You guys are just a little bit more intimidating than they are. My name is Jody Moore, and I am the Youth Services Coordinator at the Youth Library. If you have not been over there to take a tour, I invite you to come over. I highly encourage you to come see what we do. I started working in this building, so the basement was my home library as a child. And then for Judith to hire me as an adult after my kids were like in 5th, 6th grade when I decided to get a job. This building means a lot to me and always will. So when I first started, Judith took me on a tour of the building, which was during the renovation. We walked through the basement on 2x6s because the floor was not mud. And I stayed. It has been fabulous, and I wouldn't change any of it. And now being the head of the children's department, the library there's nothing better than a library. Can we all agree to that? So then moving to Miss Lillian's trust, which made the youth library possible and what it is today. So when we started talking about designing that building, the number one thing we needed was more space. When we bought new books, we had to get rid of old books. When we had a program, we were squished. Story time was held in the back of an office in the basement or out in the middle of the stacks, and we just never did seem to have enough room. So with Lillian's Trust, we now have a building to where we have our own room designated for story time. And I am happy to say it is still not big enough. Our numbers keep growing, so I think that'll be an ongoing problem forever. Programs. Everyone's talked about this beautiful room with the carpet and the tapestry walls. When we were housed in this building, we had our programs up here. I was scared to death I was going to get fired for ruining this room. 5-year-olds painting, carrying their paintbrushes down the hall to the bathroom to wash their hand or wash out their paintbrushes. We had a summer reading program once. I don't remember the gentleman's name, but he did science experiments, and he made elephant toothpaste. I don't know if any of you remember this. So he's up here on the carpet, and this colored foam goes all over the carpet. And Candy was here at that time, and we both thought, yep, we're done. Thankfully, Robin did not fire either one of us, and he cleaned it up well, and it did not stain, thankfully. But that was my biggest fear with programming in this room, was staining a carpet or kids doing something to these beautiful walls. We now have a room for play toys. So we have a playhouse, we have a farmer's market with plastic fruits and vegetables and things. We have a puppet theater, we have building blocks. We now have a room to put all of that in instead of just having it out among the book stacks. That's not saying it's not there sometimes, but it has its place to live. And teens. When teens were here, they had one room off the side of the adult department. So they couldn't get very loud, and they just didn't have much hangout space. So that was a big concern with the new building. They now have probably a third of the building for their own. They have their own area to hang out, that no one else is allowed to hang out there because it's just for them. They have their own programming. And with this room, instead of the carpet and the tapestry, we now have a room in the center of our building that is tile floor and has a sink. I fought very hard for that sink because the architect didn't think it was necessary.
they were going to have to spend a lot of money jackhammering the floor to put plumbing into the center of the building. And he just didn't think that was necessary. So I explained to him, classrooms in school, all classrooms have a sink. We compared it to a classroom. That's what we do in there. We teach art classes. We teach them how to do different messy things. I got my sink. So that was my main goal there. We have 2 study rooms that are for youth related. We do have adults use it that work with children, but teens and children alike can check out these rooms and have a quieter place to study. There's a TV if they need to hook their laptop to it or something like that. There's one in both of those rooms. With this building came 6 internet computers for youth. We did not have internet computers in the basement. We had 1 literacy computer, which is a game-based learning computer for youth. We now have 4 of those at the youth building that are played with all the time. We do have the same filters the adult library does for the internet computers, and the children do have to have parent access or parents' permission to get on the internet, of course. But the children do really like it. We do have all of these services, and we decided, since we are a youth building, that most of our services would be for the youth. So adults cannot come and just sit at the computer lab. They need to print something real quick. Of course, we'll let them sit down, print something. We don't do faxing, we don't do notary, anything like that at the youth library, because the youth do not need those services. The main thing we have increased, I think, is our outreach. With Lillian's money that she so graciously gave us, we needed more staff to do all of these, more programming, more books. So we have added to staff generously. So we have a storytime lady, her name is Miss Jenny, if anybody knows her. And she goes to all of the area daycares, and I believe all of the area preschools in Livingston County, which means every week she goes to about every daycare in town. She goes to Chula Preschool, she goes to Southwest Preschool, she goes to the Chillicothe Preschool, and multiple smaller preschools now. So she is not even in the building half of her hours because she is out doing outreach with children. We have done multiple community events now, and we hope to do even more. So with the future of the youth library, I think our possibilities are endless. Bigger, better, more diverse programming. We got more bookshelves. We're still adding. We still have bookshelves that we just do displays on because we haven't been able to fill them yet, which is a fabulous problem to have. And our vision is just to instill the love of the library, as I'm sure it's in all of you who are here, and for that to continue down through the next generation and the next generation. Thank you.
Now it's really me. I'm not Candy anymore. I'm actually Sue Lightfoot Hoy. I'm the library director since 2021. And I have received a very gracious and warm welcome from the patron base and the library board and the staff when I took this job. It has been very welcoming and very refreshing to know that I'm walking into something that is already established thanks to our predecessors. Thanks to the library team that I have, because it is. We are a library team. We have done a lot of fun things. We've done a lot of fun things. We finished up the main library, the move for the nonfiction, the audiobook, and the DVD collections downstairs. And so what was previously the children's department is now our nonfiction and audio and DVD collections. We also have a very well-appointed interlibrary loan room, thanks to Doris and Marcia and all of their, one of our retired staff, for their insights in knowing when we're serving as part of a consortium of 76 member libraries throughout the state of Missouri. We need to have a space. Yeah, it was like 63 when you guys retired last year. So we're up to 76 now. So we've actually expanded our staff and our programs for all of our ages in our respective buildings. We've collaborated with our community in many, many ways. With Rotary and the National Honor Society, they stocked the 3 little libraries that I believe Robin was a part of, making sure those 3 little libraries were secured around town in the 3 locations, Silver Moon Plaza, Dana Park, and Simpson Park. We, thanks to Miss Maggie at the back, Chalk the Walk community event that we held last spring, we are planning a very similar adventure this year. The Chamber and Main Street, I think Erin touched about some of those community-wide events that we are a part of. You know, the Boo Fest, that was amazing to know that 45 minutes, all like 150 some books were going within 45 minutes. So the downtown businesses and the churches, they are so excellent whenever we ask for their help for cool prizes for our summer reading programs. When they hold back to school fairs, they invite us, paint parties at the cultural corner, and then even a safe place to land a hot air balloon when we were tethering. Yeah. Jody, I made it happen, right? That was, we joke about that. In one of our planning meetings, Jody says, I would really love to have a hot air balloon. He says, I can make that happen.
And I looked at her and said, what?
So our library goals and objectives are basically to place our patrons first. This is accomplished by our excellent library team who understands and gives the best of themselves every day with a very friendly smile. All of our library services and programs could not happen without our library team and the library board support. So we didn't really formally recognize our library board, but those are Crystal Nar as president, Sadie Beatsma as vice president, Daniel Savage as secretary, I think, and Sherry Parks as treasurer, and Rachel Hirschberger as our board member. As we look back, we need to look forward just as much as Miss D did during her tenure. The reach and the impact of the library will be just as important and vital to our residents and our patrons. What does our future hold? Bookmobile? Reincarnation? If we gathered all the positive remarks we just got from our social media post? More technology? More services? More programs? What does it look like? Whatever the future might hold, we will remain strong and diligent in our mission. The mission of the Livingston County Library is to provide quality materials and services which fulfill educational, informational, cultural, and recreational needs of the entire community in an atmosphere that is welcoming, respectful, and comfortable. I would be remiss if I did not mention the Friends of the Library, the group that was before the reorganization last year. They were very strong advocates for us when we needed them, especially during Robin's tenure with the bond levy or the bond issue going forward. They've been very advocate for us, and I, you know, we still need that support. Yes. Helping with our projects and our community engagements, but we also need your advocacy, and that's where the future holds for us. Thank you all for coming. I know it's a little bit longer than what we all expected, but hey, that's all right. We're celebrating 100 years, and we need to do enough. So, cake and punch are available for you. And once again, thank you for coming. I appreciate it.